looking to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good afternoon, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila and Vietnam. Hello, Eliana.
Hello, I'm Eliana Sebastian, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. The Department of Foreign Affairs has raised the alert level 2 for Filipinos in Sri Lanka due to the security situation in that country, but clarified that there is no evacuation plan yet, and we'll hear from the DFA spokesperson himself. Datu Montawal town in Maguindanao has been placed under a state of calamity due to the massive flooding in its 11 villages, affecting some 5,200 families. The Philippine Navy announced that the sea phase of this year's Rim of the Pacific, or RIMPAC, exercises started on July 12 with missile frigate BRP Antonio Luna now underway along with other participating warships. First in our news, here in the country, Datu Montawal town in Maguindanao has been placed under a state of calamity due to the massive flooding in its 11 villages, affecting more than 5,000 families. Balumol Kadiding, Municipal Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Officer, said the floods also destroyed crops, but the extent of damage has yet to be determined. He said the calamity declaration would allow the town to use its calamity fund to cushion the impact of flooding and to help farmers recover from the losses on crops. In nearby Pagalungan town, all of its 12 barangays were also affected by waist-deep floods, and some people left their homes and moved beside the highway, but many still prefer to stay, claiming when the rain stops, floods will recede. Ben Alip, Municipal Disaster Officer, said crop damage based on the town's Agriculture Office report was estimated at 20 million pesos. In Datu Salibos, officials said the floodwaters started to recede Tuesday, leaving thick mud in the flooded areas. Even the town police's office was flooded by up to knee-level water. In other news, the Department of Foreign Affairs raised the alert level 2 last Saturday for Filipinos in Sri Lanka, and that is because of the security situation in the country. But they also clarified that there is no evacuation plan yet. Let's listen in.
Alert levels, depende yan kung gano'ng kataas yung alert level na binibigay. No? Under alert level 2, yung net effect niyan, wala nang bagong deployment ng mga Filipinos sa Sri Lanka. In other words, hindi na tayo magbibigay ng bagong contracts muna or para sa mga Pilipino para magtrabaho sa Sri Lanka. Yung magbabakasyon from Sri Lanka na uuwi ng Pilipinas, makakabalik. Pero yung bagong deployment, no. Dahil sa sitwasyon. Kasi tinatayo usually yung alert level 2, explain ko, kung meron, sabihin ko sa English, threats to the life, security, and property of Filipinos due to internal disturbance, instability, or external threats. So alam naman natin may difficult situation ngayon sa Sri Lanka. So right now, hindi natin sinasabihan na kailangan ng umuwi or bawal lumakbay sa Sri Lanka, pero hindi tayo nagde-deploy ng bagong contract workers po. There are a little over 700. Mga 700 yan. Karamihan do are hindi contract workers, mga Filipina na may asawang Sri Lankan. Kamusta kalagayan nila? Well, ayon sa ating tanggapan, Philippine Embassy sa Dhaka, sa Bangladesh, sila yung in charge sa Sri Lanka, at saka meron tayong honorary consul dun sa Sri Lanka. Of course, well, mahirap ang sitwasyon, no? Mataas ang presyo, may mga pagkukulang kunyari yung fuel or electricity, other things. However, meron din nagsasabi si Dr. Benjamin Reyes, dating USEC ng Dangerous Drugs Board yan. He's now based in Colombo kasi siya yung Secretary General ng isang organisasyon called the Colombo Plan, no? Nagbibigay ng funding for projects around the region. No? Sabi niya, hindi naman yung chaotic na nagkakapatayan o di kaya walang-wala. Mataas lang ang presyo. Yan ang problema. So, sa 700 na Filipino doon, meron na mga 100 na parang nagsabi na gusto nila makauwi. Pero karamihan will stay there. Alam naman natin na bukod sa may family sila doon, mga Filipino are very resilient and ready to face all challenges. No? Maaaring magkaroon na rin ng improvement sa situation kasi today yung parliament pipili ng formally ng bagong presidente and we'll see what goes on. We are monitoring the situation. More than 100, mga 115 more or less ang gusto umuwi. No? Yung mga yon, nagpe-prepare kami para sa mga gustong umuwi. Well, hindi tayo makakuha ng sweeper flight. No? Kasi kailangan niya maraming administrative requirements. And Sri Lanka hasn't given yet, the government of Sri Lanka hasn't yet approved yung landing rights or what. Pero may mga commercial flights. Tuloy pa rin commercial flights. So isang paraan yan na pinag-isipan namin ay fund yung mga plane tickets para sa gusto makauwi. No? Now, as for yung mga matitira sa 600, by the way, yung 100 na uuwi, hopefully within the next week, next 2 weeks, nag-uumpisa na yan magsiuwian. No? That's our goal. No? Yung mga matitira, we're trying to reach financial assistance to them. No? So nagagawa kami ng mga bank kasi ang problema po, hindi basta-basta ngayon makapasok ng pera sa Sri Lanka. Because may mga bang yung bagong pamahalaan o yung pamahalaan because of inflation or other regulations, kunyari, bibigyan natin ng rough amount, ayuda, yung mga Filipinos, let's say a few $100 bawat isa. And they're about 600. Yung amount yun, 20,000 or 200, 600 times 300, magiging about $20,000. Hindi ka makarimit ngayon ng $20,000 sa account sa Sri Lanka. So we're trying to find a way. Ang ating embahada sa Dhaka under the Charge d'Affaires, si Ms. Reyes is trying to think, ano kaya magtayo sila, Western Union account or something. Basta gagawin lahat ng paraan para may maabot na assistance po. Pero right now, ang priority yung gusto umuwi. Yung gusto makauwi, bilhin sila ng plane ticket.
Brunei is vulnerable from the impact of climate change as rising sea levels will affect its economic hubs located along the coastline. Dato H.J. Muhammad Juanda H.J. Abdul Rashid said the Brunei economy and capital city will be under threat from the effects of climate change, with sea levels projected to rise to 1.1 meters by the end of this century. It is crucial that we play our part in climate action to minimize the effects and risk of climate change as part of our efforts to contribute to global action, he said during the opening of Climate Action Week at the Brunei Mid-Year Conference and Exhibition. He said Brunei has not been exempted from the effects of the climate crisis, experiencing unpredictable weather with more floods, forest fires, major landslides, and strong winds that cause damage to infrastructure and the environment. He said limited capacity, technology, and technical capabilities remain a challenge. Further collaboration and sharing of knowledge and expertise would strengthen and improve existing policies to prepare and respond to climate-related disasters. He added that his ministry will focus on completing the preliminary climate risk and disaster assessment this year as it begins developing the country's long-term strategy in meeting the nationally determined contributions commitments. As part of the Paris Agreement, each country is required to outline their nationally determined contributions to reduce emissions. With temperatures expected to remain above normal until the middle of next week, the World Meteorological Organization warned that heat waves are and will occur more and more frequently. The pattern is linked to the observed warming of the planet that can be attributed to human activity, raising serious concerns for the planet's future. Let's take a look.
These kind of heat waves are becoming more and more frequent in the coming decades. The negative trend in climate will continue at least until 2060s, independent of our success in climate mitigation. We have already lost the game concerning melting of glaciers, so we expect that this melting of glaciers will continue for the coming hundreds of years or even coming thousands of years anyhow, and also sea level rise will continue for the same period. I'm happy to wear this kind of ties at these kind of events, which is demonstrating what we have seen happening in the climate for the past 150 years. So you can see that in the past we had much more blue color, and more recently we have seen more red color, which indicates that the heat waves have become more frequent.
Climate change is affecting our health in many, many ways, not only by the heat waves, which are a direct consequence in the number of diseases and conditions and death that is causing, but as well because it will be touching the pillars of our health, the access to food. We will not have a good agricultural production, access to water. There will be water scarcity for sure. 99% of the global population is breathing air that is not respecting the proposed standards by WHO, the air quality guidelines. The best solution to this will be, again, being very ambitious on tackling the causes of this global warming. We have been alerting for a long time that climate change is affecting very much human health, and therefore taking measures to reach the zero carbon and accelerating the transition to clean, renewable sources of energy.
More deaths among the elderly and those with pre-existing health conditions are feared due to the ongoing heat wave and the challenges for health services to face the increased demand.
With less than 8 years remaining to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, the President of the UN General Assembly convened a Moment for Nature debate on Tuesday to examine the interconnected environmental threats hampering efforts to achieve sustainable development. The day-long event is being held to assess recent decisions on the global environment agenda and to present solutions to common bottlenecks, such as the gaps between commitments and actions, as well as the need for wider mobilization. Let's listen in.
So there is an ancient Sanskrit phrase which literally means the world is one family. And that Sanskrit phrase is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It means the world is one family. It means coexistence. Nowadays, when we think about the word coexistence, when we think about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the only thing that seems to come to our mind is living in peace between different parts of the human species. You know, living in peace between different cultures, races, ethnicity, skin colors, countries. Because somewhere along our journey of being humans, we've completely forgotten that we are not the only species on this planet. We're just one among millions and millions of species on this planet.
We know the situation is dire, and as always, it is the most vulnerable, those who have contributed the least, that are affected the most. I've seen this in my own country, the Maldives. Just recently, over 1/3 of inhabited islands were affected by sea swells, affecting lives, livelihoods, agriculture, the soil, and the people's homes. Just imagine when the sea rushes into the island without warning and with nowhere to run. We have just 89 months, just 89 months to halve global emissions, just 89 months to avoid catastrophic climate change, just 89 months to do everything we can to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. That is not a lot of time. For small island developing states like my own country, the Maldives, the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees is a death sentence.
Key milestones lie ahead of us this year where we can and must deliver. Above all, we must limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. At the COP27 climate conference in Egypt, We need commitments that will deliver a reduction of emissions by 45% by 2030, so we can reach net zero emissions by mid-century. Current national commitments point to an increase of almost 14% this decade. That spells catastrophe. At the COP15 Biodiversity Conference in Montreal, we need a bold global agreement that tackles the key drivers of biodiversity loss. We need to close the biodiversity finance gap of approximately $700 billion a year by 2030. And we must eliminate the annual $500 billion of harmful subsidies and redirect them towards incentivizing biodiversity-positive activities. We must protect and enhance nature's contributions to people. We need to match commitments with credible and verifiable actions and the finance for implementation. Ultimately, our survival depends on it. Together, we can and must steer humanity to the path of living in harmony with the planet. Let us seize this moment for nature to do that.
Ecosystems are endangered, climate change is having devastating effects, and increased land, air, ocean, and water pollution are impacting us all, in particular, vulnerable populations. This emergency demands a new mindset. The health of our planet is directly linked to human health and prosperity.
We need to see a massive political lift for nature. The framework must come with an ambitious package of goals and targets that moves action for nature beyond the environmental bubble. It is only by involving every sector, every company, every investor, and every individual that impacts or depends on nature that we will address the key drivers for nature loss.
December, countries will gather in Montreal to conclude the Global Biodiversity Framework, a new set of goals for nature over the next decade. Meanwhile, Myanmar is marking the 75th anniversary of the assassination of its independence hero, Aung San, with drivers on Yangon streets honking against junta rule. Take a look. Now, Aung San Suu Kyi, the daughter of the man known affectionately as Bog Yo Ki, meaning general, is currently detained by the military her father helped create. Martyrs' Day, commemorating Aung San's killing, normally sees hundreds queuing to pay their respects at the Secretariat, a sprawling colonial-era complex in downtown Yangon where local rivals shot dead the general and 8 other prominent leaders. But on Tuesday, the roads were largely deserted, as you can see here, with soldiers on watch at the compound, and some ordering passers-by trying to take selfies near the buildings of red and yellow brick to move along. Others patrolled in jeeps, and extra roadblocks had been set up in the usually bustling district. His daughter, Aung San Suu Kyi, who was 2 at the time of his death, became a democracy figurehead, Nobel laureate, and nemesis of the military. Detained since the military's latest power grab in February last year, she is now battling a raft of charges in a junta court and could be jailed for more than 150 years, that is, if she's found guilty on all counts. Now, parallelly, state media footage earlier showed the junta's number 2, So Win, placing a wreath at the Martyrs' Mausoleum in Yangon, another spot usually bustling with those wishing to pay their respects, but which on Tuesday was limited to invitees only. No officials from Western countries, which have led international criticism of the junta's bloody crackdown on dissent, were present at this event that you can see here, according to a diplomatic source. Born in 1915 under British colonial rule, Aung San became leader of nationalist fighters in what was then Burma, making him the founder of Myanmar's military. And he remains a deeply revered figure and a core factor behind his daughter's enduring popularity.
Myanmar junta troops are committing war crimes by laying landmines on a massive scale around villages where they are battling anti-coup fighters, rights campaign group Amnesty International said Wednesday. Fighting has ravaged swaths of the country since last year's putsch, which sparked renewed clashes with ethnic rebel groups and the formation of dozens of People's Defense Forces now battling the junta. During a visit to Kaya State near the Thai border, Amnesty researchers interviewed landmine survivors, medical workers who had treated them, and others involved in clearing operations, the organization said. It said it had credible information that the military had used mines in at least 20 villages, including on paths to rice fields, resulting in civilian deaths and injuries. Amnesty also said it had documented several instances where the military had laid mines around the church and on its grounds. Amnesty said in at least one documented case, soldiers booby-trapped a house stairwell with a tripwire improvised explosive device. Myanmar is not a signatory to the United Nations Convention that prohibits the use, stockpiling, or development of anti-personnel mines. Its military has been repeatedly accused of atrocities and war crimes during decades of internal conflict. Military violence against the Rohingya minority in 2017 sent an estimated 750,000 people fleeing into neighboring Bangladesh, bringing with them accounts of rape, murder, and arson. In other news, President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. is inviting Filipinos to watch him deliver his first State of the Nation address on July 25 at the Batasang Pambansa in Quezon City. Marcos made the call in the caption of a video montage posted in his official Facebook page, showing his journey from the presidential campaign to his inauguration and in carrying out presidential duties at Malacanang Palace. He said, "Our very first State of the Nation address is approaching. Join me and listen to the state of our country and our plans and goals as a people for the coming years." In the comments section, netizens sent good luck wishes and expressed anticipation to watch the president's report on the state of the country and the government's agenda for the year. Article 6, Section 15 also prescribes that the Congress shall convene once every year on the fourth Monday of July for its regular session. The House of Representatives has authorized full capacity for Marcos' first SONA on July 25 amid the prevailing COVID-19 pandemic. House Secretary General Mark Leandro Mendoza earlier said roughly 1,200 people will be allowed entry to Congress, including 300 Congress members, 24 senators, and members of the diplomatic corps. This would be the first time that Congress will be allowed at full capacity since 2019. Former President Rodrigo Duterte held his last two SONAs in a mixed live and virtual setup due to the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions.
In today's other news, the Southeast Asian cities with the greatest overall health systems in the middle of this year are listed in the Southeastern Asia Healthcare Index by City 2022 mid-year by Numbeo, a website with the largest database on the cost of living and healthcare in the world. Chiang Mai has the best public health system, with Bangkok and Pattaya coming in third and fourth, respectively. The results of a survey given to website visitors were ranked according to general caliber of medical services, staff, tools, and costs, among other factors. The survey revealed that Chiang Mai is a popular city among foreigners because of its low cost of living, conveniences, richness of culture, and sizable expat population, according to government spokesperson Tanakorn Wanbun Konggana, above all compared to medical. In the same study, the Philippines, Makati, Singapore, and Malaysia's Kuala Lumpur, respectively, received votes for second, fifth, and sixth place. Meanwhile, the ASEAN +3 Macroeconomic Research Office, or AMRO, raised its 2022 growth forecast for the Philippines to 6.9%, the highest in the region, amid slashed projections for ASEAN +3 countries. Take a look. The Regional Macroeconomic Surveillance Organization cited domestic consumption and investment as key drivers of growth in the country. It said the driver for this growth is basically the opening of the economy, AMRO Chief Economist Ho E-Kor said in a virtual briefing earlier. He also said earlier that growth will be driven by domestic consumption and investment, such as infrastructure or projects under the Build program. Mr. Kor said the domestic economy is expected to do relatively well in terms of growth this year amid the COVID-19 infections due in part to the continued vaccination drive.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Itong lalaki na to, nagtutulog-tulugan kasi ayaw kanyang tulungan. Hindi siya gentleman. Hoy, gising! Tumayo ka dyan!
Ha? Dok, may pag-asa ba itong maayos tong mukha ko?
Malaki. Malaki!
Ibig mo sabihin, Dok, malaki ang pag-asang maayos ang mukha ko?
Hindi, malaki yung gasusin mo para sa mukhang yan.
Kakain kayo in 30 minutes, finish or not finish, pass your place, okay?
Province of Bohol, we produced majority of the products because of our terrain. We focused on the food security for the Boholano, like rice, corn, root crops.
I want to tell to the whole world that we Filipinos exist in the chocolate world.
As much as possible, we wanted our guests to stay and enjoy the facilities that we have here. Yes, that's right.
So that they won't go out.
Yeah, it's a one-stop shop already.
Wala pang masyadong foreigners, pero yung local natin talagang umano sila. Nag-travel talaga ang locals natin.
Open for Business is in Bohol, and Bohol is open for business!
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
Welcome back, and the news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila and Vietnam with Eliana Sebastian. Now to Laos, where Laos Safe has certified more than 100 tourism businesses and helped to make Laos currently one of the most open Southeast Asian countries for international tourists. Take a look. Laos is now open to both vaccinated travelers and those who are not vaccinated but have tested negative for COVID-19. While restorative measures still apply in other countries, Laos has moved quickly to simplify the arrival experience with the goal of boosting the number of visitors to the country. A dynamic reversal after 2 years of tightly controlled borders. Laos Safe is a health and hygiene program for the tourism and hospitality sector officially approved by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Information, Culture and Tourism, or MICT. Laos Safe comprises a series of health and hygiene standards for different subsectors of the tourism and hospitality industry, including for accommodation providers, food and beverage outlets, airlines, tourist attractions, tour guides, and drivers. Implemented by the Ministry of Information, Culture and Tourism and approved by the Ministry of Health, Laos Safe is a nationwide initiative designed to create a world-class health and hygiene system within the tourism and hospitality industry.
While 2/3 of Singapore's local workforce are worried about job loss due to illness or disabilities, more than half do not have any disability income protection, according to findings from the AIA Disability Income Survey 2022. The survey, conducted in April 2022 among more than 1,000 respondents, consisting of full-time working Singapore residents aged 18 and above. Melita Teo, Chief Customer and Digital Officer, AIA Singapore, said losing one's job and becoming dependent on others due to an unexpected accident or illness is painful and places heavy financial and emotional burdens on a person and their loved ones. Understanding the pain points of disability income plans allows them to better address Singaporeans' concerns, which range from affordability to ease of getting insured and making a claim. It said AIA Pay Protector is the first of its kind in the market that promises payouts will not be offset by any sources of income or other disability income insurance payouts and will not be affected by any changes to income prior to disability, giving customers a peace of mind.
Meanwhile, the ASEAN Committee on Consumer Protection, or ACCP, just launched the Consumer Online Distance Learning Tools. It is a self-paced learning course on 4 basic consumer topics, free for all registered users. The e-learning modules cover topics such as 1, understanding consumer issues, 2, becoming a consumer champion, 3, building a consumer movement, and 4, mediating disputes. The modules aim to promote consumer champions to advocate or campaign for consumer rights. Participants can take part in all lessons and quizzes and obtain a certificate of completion at the end of each module. The e-learning modules, launched at the 3rd ASEAN Consumer Protection Conference, are consistent with deliverable 4.1.5 of the ASEAN Strategic Action Plan for Consumer Protection 2025. Additional e-learning modules will be added to the system in the coming years. The development of the ASEAN Consumer Distance Learning Tools, or the Learning Management System, or LMS, for e-learning is supported by the Deutsche Gesellschaft für International Zusammenarbeit GmbH under the Consumer Protection in ASEAN Protect project.
The United States on Tuesday added Vietnam, Cambodia, Brunei, and Macau to a human trafficking blacklist that already counts Malaysia, alleging weak efforts to stop forced sex work or assist migrant laborers. In an annual report, the United States also added authoritarian-ruled Belarus to the blacklist and, in a rare criticism of a Western ally, put Bulgaria on a watch list over concerns it is not taking trafficking seriously. Let's take a look.
Tackling corruptions helps to combat human trafficking. because corruption facilitates trafficking and perpetuates impunity for traffickers. Our reporting and diplomatic engagement aims to shine a light on these activities, encourage governments to address official complicity, and advance efforts to combat human trafficking, while simultaneously combating the corruption that enables it.
Vietnam, which has a warming relationship with Washington due to shared concerns over a rising China, was downgraded to Tier 3, with the State Department saying that prosecutions dropped off in 2021. The report especially found fault with Hanoi taking no action against a Vietnamese diplomat and embassy staff member posted in Saudi Arabia who were accused of complicity in trafficking several of their citizens. In Cambodia, the State Department said that endemic corruption has impeded efforts to help thousands, including children, trafficked to entertainment establishments, brick kilns, and online scam operations. In the semi-autonomous Chinese city of Macau, a former Portuguese territory known for its bustling casinos and sex industry, the report said authorities did not provide services to a single trafficking victim for a third consecutive year. Along with Malaysia, nations that remained on the list from the previous year were Afghanistan, Cuba, Eritrea, Guinea-Bissau, Iran, Myanmar, North Korea, Nicaragua, Russia, South Sudan, Syria, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela.
In today's other news, Netflix reported losing subscribers for the second quarter in a row Tuesday as the streaming giant battles fierce competition and viewer belt tightening. But the company assured investors of better days ahead. The loss of 970,000 paying customers in the most recent quarter wasn't as big as expected and left Netflix with just shy of 221 million subscribers. Tough in some ways, losing 1 million and calling it success, but really we are set up very well for the next year, according to the company's co-chief and founder Reed Hastings in an earnings presentation. Netflix shares were up slightly in aftermarket trades, a sign that investors were remaining faithful. Netflix has been investing heavily in original content, such as hit shows Squid Game and Stranger Things, to fend off powerhouse competitors such as Disney with its Marvel and Star Wars franchises. Netflix had 6.8 million subscribers in Southeast Asia at the end of 2021, according to data from Singapore-based media consultancy Media Partners Asia.
Twitter nods at an early win Tuesday in its fight with Elon Musk after a judge agreed to a fast-track trial on whether to force the Tesla chief to complete his $44 billion buyout of the social network. Billions of dollars are at stake, but so is the future of Twitter, which Musk has said should allow any legal speech. And adds his position that has sparked fears the network could be used to incite violence. Judge Kathleen McCormick, who set a 5-day trial and left aside to work with the court to fix the exact date, noted that the risk of irreparable harm generally grows the longer a merger remains in limbo.
I think just generally the
Muslim argued fiercely against a relatively quick date, saying the court issues are simply too complex. Musk's lawyer Andrew Rosman said, the real issue here is what's the percentage of real users on the Twitter platform versus spam or false accounts. Tuesday's hearing was just the first step in what could be a lengthy legal fight that could end in a trial, but also a settlement.
Gusto niyo pong maging mama ko? Salamat po, Mrs. Elsa.
Ay, mahal ko. Magpakasaya na at maghanda dahil magsasanib puwersa na ang pera at impluensya.
Mahabang proseso ito, Romina.
Magkano ba?
Para manahimik ka na. Ang laki nito. Basta huwag ka nang magpapakita kahit kailan.
Ano ba, Dr. Romulo? Kapag pera ang usapan, walang imposible sa'yo. Napababa niya ang piyansa.
Paano nga?
Meron lang akong ipapagawa sa iyong maliit na pabor.
Gagawin kong lahat ng paraan para mawala ka na rito, Elsa Guerra.
Ngayong linggo, sa Mi Esperanza.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together, let's stand together. Sa Net 25.
Jimin, ano na nangyari dun sa puzzle na binigay ko sa'yo?
$98.93. Di yun ang sagot.
Pwes, ano sagot dyan?
Ang sagot ay narito.
Sa unang pagkikita, masasagot ang isang misteryo.
Nasolve ko na po yung mystery.
Habang ang muling pagkikita,
Nice to meet you, ma'am. Kakalipot ko lang sa kabilang bahay.
mag-iiwan ng mas maraming misteryo.
Sino siya? Sino ang lalaking yun?
Malamang curious ka na kung sino ko. Babawiin na kita ngayon.
Kaninong anak yan?
Anak ko po siya.
Hindi mo siya anak.
A Place in the Sun.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together, let's stand together. Sa Net 25.
Hindi ko kayang talunin si Clara. Sasabihin ko sa kanya ang totoo na ako ang nagnakaw ng mga design niya at tinamay lang kita. Sorry, Ivan.
Pinapatawad kita.
Friends?
Ang pag-amin sa kanyang nasaktan, mauuwi ba sa pagkakaibigan o panibagong bakbakan?
Ano ba talaga ang totoo? Ang totoo, wala kang kwentang ina. Bitiwan mo ako! Bitiwan mo ako! Manlalako ka! Masama kang tao! Sinungaling ka!
Palabra de Amor.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together, let's stand together. Sa Net 25.
Welcome back. We're still coming to you live from Manila and Vietnam with Eliana Sebastian. And now to Hawaii, or to the Philippines first. The HMAS Sydney, or DDG-42 Hobart-class air warfare destroyer of the Royal Australian Navy, WASW, docked at Pier 15, South Harbour, Manila for a two-day port visit last Wednesday. The Australian warship's visit highlights the strong and long-standing relationship between the Philippines and Australia in promoting maritime safety and security in the region. That is according to Navy spokesperson Commander Benjo Negranza in a statement on Wednesday night. The RAN's Hobart-class air warfare destroyer consists of 3 ships. It's designed to protect a naval task force and shore assets from air and missile attack. Now, these ships could also conduct air or anti-surface, anti-submarine, and naval gunfire support roles. Though then paid a courtesy call to a Philippine Navy flag officer in command, Vice Admiral Adelius Bordado, at the Navy headquarters in Naval Station Jose Andrada, Rojas Boulevard, Manila.
The Philippine Navy on Friday announced that the sea phase of this year's Rim of the Pacific, or RIMPAC exercise, started on July 12 with missile frigate BRP Antonio Luna now underway along with other participating warships. This year's RIMPAC is scheduled from June 29 to August 4. Filipino sailors began the first day of the at-sea phase with serialized training, which included tactical maneuvers, gunnery exercises, or GUNEX, and raid exercises, or RAIDEX. RIMPAC is the world's premier and largest joint and combined naval exercise hosted by the U.S. Navy's Pacific Fleet and Third Fleet. held biennially in around Hawaii. This year marks the third time that the Philippine Navy deployed a contingent to the naval exercise, which allows Filipino sailors to exchange best practices with and learn from the best navies in the world. This participation trumpets the Philippine Navy's commitment to promoting multilateral cooperation, leading to the strengthening of relationships and cooperation among regional and extra-regional navies. It is also a great avenue to train participating commanders, staff, and forces in the planning and execution of combined naval operations.
And that is the latest news in and around the ASEAN region and beyond. Thank you very much, Eliana, for keeping me company today here on ASEAN in Focus. Stay safe, always.
Thank you, Alma. You stay safe too. Once again, I'm Eliana Sebastian from EBC Vietnam Bureau, and we live in extraordinary times.
And we'll see you back tomorrow, same time, same place, here on ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles, and stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good day.
Napakasarap naman ng